And it's Miss Terry, and I'm here today with my January picks for students in grades 7 through 8. We'll do some fiction, some graphic novels, and then we'll talk about some nonfiction. This first one is a good old zombie book. It's called Eat Your Heart Out, and it's about a girl named Vivian she's very popular. She's an athlete, but her stepdad thinks she's fat and that she needs to lose weight, and Vivian doesn't really feel that way. And then unfortunately he decides to send her away to something called Camp Featherlight, which is supposed to get her into shape and get her to lose weight. Well, she's not very happy about going, and then she finds out that her ex-best friend Allie is going to be going along with her. Allie is hoping that this camp will be a miracle for her, but they realize something is wrong pretty quickly as they are driving on the bus to Arizona when they hit a freak blizzard, and then things at camp turn to worse as they are overcome by zombies, and Vivian and Allie have to figure out how they are going to survive their time at camp and really learn how to accept who they are and be happy with it, and maybe convince some other people too that they are just fine the way they are. That's called Eat Your Heart Out. Victories Greater Than Death is a new science fiction book about a girl named Tina who actually is a clone of a galactic hero. And inside of her, in her heart, is planted a rescue beacon that at some point in her life is going to go off. And when that happens, she's either going to save the planet or she's going to be hunted down and killed. Well, when the beacon does finally go off, there is a group called the Royal Fleet that kind of whisks her off the planet in the hopes that she will be able to channel her clone's abilities to lead and win the battles. Well, yes, Tina does have some memories of the clone. She is not her, and she's struggling to keep her group together before the enemy finds her and destroys her. So it's called Victories Greater Than Death. It kind of has a ragtag group of friends that decide to help her. So if you like things like Guardians of the Galaxy, you might enjoy this book. The Words in My Hands is a story about a young girl named Piper, and Piper is deaf. She gets along in her world by reading lips, wearing hearing aids, and just really trying to navigate the world around her through her art. And this book is written as if it is her art journal. There is a lot of different drawings and sketches and writings and poems in here that kind of tells the story. And what ends up happening is she lives in Australia with her mom, who's a scientist, and her mom had created this additive to add nutrients to food, but it also turned out that it eradicated cancer. Unfortunately, while everybody had been eating it and taking it, turns out there are some negative side effects to it. So the additive's popularity kind of dies along with her mother's ability to continue working, and they end up kind of in this tiny little shed trying to figure out what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. And Piper decides that she's going to try to start growing her own food. So this book also talks about how you could go about doing that, as well as her trying to figure out how to navigate this new world that she is in. It's called The Words in My Hands. I Dare You is a nice, quick, short read about a boy named Rainey who ends up taping a fight at school. He makes a video and posts it online, and it ends up going viral. So a couple of his schoolmates, Jordan and Rowan, convince him to make another video, and they want him to capture a mysterious figure that's kind of been hanging out in the woods. And they're not sure if it's a real person or if it's a ghost, but the videos about this being are also being very popular on the internet. Unfortunately, kids start disappearing, and Rainey is concerned that this figure might be responsible, and they're decided that they're going to figure out the mystery of what is going on. So it's called I Dare You. It's a little bit on the creepy side. The Rules Have Changed is another quick read about a boy named Blake, and he's been studying abroad for the last 3 years, but now he's returned back to his old school to discover that everything has changed. They've changed to kind of like these military type outfits. It's very, very strict. It's almost like they're being brainwashed by the new leader of the school. And the school leader just says, no, I'm just training these kids to become community leaders. But some of the behaviors and activities that are going on, Blake feels are not safe and aren't good for the students, and he is going to try to stop it from happening. So it's called The Rules Have Changed. Burden Falls is the story about a town named Burden Falls and a girl named Ava. And what happens is Burden Falls is kind of shrouded in all of these myths and scary stories, kind of based on witchcraft and this rumor of, or this urban legend about a girl named Dead-Eyed Sadie that people have said that they have seen wandering the town. And Ava kind of has had a string of bad luck, and then one of her classmates ends up dead in the falls without their eyes. And Ava is wondering if there maybe is some truth to the Dead-Eyed Sadie legend, and whether or not she can solve the mystery before other classmates end up dead. So this is definitely a murder mystery, but it's also on the scary side because it has that ghost element to it. So it's called Burden Falls. Remedy is the story about a girl named Kara, and Kara has been very, very sick since third grade. She's not able to go outside very much. She's been missing a lot of school, and she kind of relies on her mother, whose name is Shailene, to kind of keep track of all of her care. However, the school's kind of saying, you're missing too much school, you're too far behind, you really need to do better. So her mom very reluctantly allows Kara to have a tutor named Xavier, and Xavier is really starting to question how Kara is being taken care of by her mom. Then Shailene starts to complain that there isn't enough money for her care, and she kind of starts this like crowdsourced GoFundMe page, and the money starts pouring in. And they end up hiring a new doctor named Dr. Eric, who has even worse restrictions for Kara. And Kara is deciding that I don't really want to live my life this way, and I'm not sure my mom is really telling me the truth about what is wrong with me. So that's called Remedy. If you like books like Everything, you probably would enjoy that, or the movie. So I have two kind of end of the world type books. This one is called The Electric Kingdom, and this is about 18-year-old Nico, who lives in a world where there are things called flu flies that have pretty much decimated most of the human population. People are getting sick left, right, and sideways. They really aren't able to get better most of the time. Her mom has already passed away. They kind of been living in this isolated farmhouse, kind of away from everybody, but the flies are everywhere, and her mom has passed away, and now her dad is very sick, and he's told Nico that she needs to leave and she needs to go out on her own and try to find this ecological wonder on her own. And as she's going, she meets several other survivors, including a 12-year-old named Kit, who's kind of taking care of his siblings after his mom has passed, and he was told of a safe place for survivors, and that's what he's hunting for. And he and Nico kind of join forces to get through this horrible land that they are now living in. So it's called The Electric Kingdom. And then another kind of end of the world story. This one is called Any Sign of Life, and this is about a girl named Paige, and Paige ends up getting sick. She doesn't really remember what happened after that. She was out for 6 days. When she wakes up, everything she knows and loves is gone. Her parents are dead. There doesn't really seem to be anyone left around except for a radio signal that she's hearing in Sandusky, Ohio. And she lives in Ohio herself, so she decides with her dog to go and find who is manning this radio signal. And along the way, she meets a couple other kids who are working towards who decide that they're going to go with her. Now, if you like TV shows like The Grateful Dead, you probably would really enjoy this book. There's not zombies in it, but it's really kind of a look at what happens to society when there's very few people left and everybody's kind of fighting for survival. So it's kind of Any Sign of Life. I said The Grateful Dead, which is a music band. I meant The Walking Dead. And then this last one is actually one of the first young adult novels to come out that deals with the COVID crisis and the pandemic. And this is about two teens, Maxine, who goes by Max, and Jonah, and they meet in March of 2020, just before everything shuts down in California. And this story talks about how do you start a relationship with someone when you can't really be together. And Max is kind of in some desperate situation. Her mom isn't able to work because of the pandemic, and so she's kind of been, Max has been delivering groceries for people, so she kind of has to go out into the pandemic world, whereas Jonah is a little bit luckier. He comes from a wealthier family, but his sister has an autoimmune disease, which makes her very high risk for catching COVID. So this is the story of the two of them building their relationship during a very difficult time. Some of this might hit very close to home to us. So this is called Hello from There. So those are some of the fiction books. Some of the graphic novels. This first one is called Swamp Thing, Twin Branches. And this is about two brothers, Alec and Walker, who are twins. And Alec is kind of a shy kid, and whereas Walker is more like always the life of the party. Well, they end up going to stay with their rural cousins who live near a swamp. And even though Walker is starting to kind of make his mark on the social scene, Alec is working in this laboratory where he's kind of hiding away this experiment that he brought along with him, but it slowly starts to consume him, and they realize that there are some deep, dark things that take place in the swamp. A little bit on the creepy side. This next one is called Stars Hide Your Fire, and this is also a little bit on the scary side. This one is about two friends, Andrea and Dara, who really are just hoping that their dreams come true, and they have kind of this encounter with a spirit named Carmen who makes them all these promises. But then another stranger pops up. His name is Liam, and he tries to warn the girls that making these promises with the spirit, there is a price for that, and they might not get exactly what they hoped for. That Stars Hide Your Fire. This next one is called Avery, and this takes place in a future where your social standing is extremely important. In fact, it's completely regulated by a new app that has come out called Ranked, where you can earn points for being cool and doing the right things, and you can lose points. Well, this is the story about a girl named Avery, and overnight her rank just plummets, and it causes all of these problems. She's getting bullied at school, her mom loses her job, she's being turned away from restaurants, so your rank is really crucial to living the life that you would like, and she's really struggling to try to figure out what exactly has happened. Luckily, she has a best friend named Zoe who doesn't care about this rank stuff at all, and they are determined to bring this app down. So it's called Avery. It's very scary to think that your whole life could revolve around your social media presence. This next one is called Malika. That's how you pronounce it. And it is a story about a young girl who becomes queen of her empire. And she kind of got the crown in an unusual way, that her father had kind of split the empire in half. And now there's been a civil war for many years, and Malika is trying very hard to unite the two things together. And then they end up finding a new enemy, which is a part of the Ming dynasty. And she is struggling against this new foe who would like to destroy her entire kingdom and their way of life, until she ends up finding a magical sword called the Dragon's Destiny that gives a boost to some of her powers, and she's hoping that this will be what turns the tide of the war. If you like Marvel characters or the DC world, you'll definitely enjoy Malika. I also have a new Spider-Man comic. This one is called Web of Spider-Man, and thanks to Tony Stark, there is a new scientific research station for the Marvel Universe characters, and Spider-Man, of course, has been asked to take part in studying some of the new things that Tony Stark is starting to think up, all of the scientific gadgets and such that make Spider-Man Spider-Man. But of course, there's always a price, and there's always an enemy who would like to take those gadgets away, and Spider-Man and the other characters are going to have to figure out how they're going to keep everything safe and everyone on our planet happy. So it's called Spider-Man. Web of Spider-Man. This one is called Incredible Dune. It's actually a historical fiction graphic novel, and it takes place right as the internet is first starting. So it follows two characters, Allison, who's kind of living with her relatively abusive father who's a magician, but then he brings home the family's first computer, and she goes online and meets a young man named Samir, and they start talking online, and Samir agrees to run away with Allison. And then the other part of the story is about a boy named Richard who gets this mysterious note in his locker to visit an online bulletin board system, and he meets a kind of a young woman named Tina who really kind of tears apart his life, and this is the story of those two teens as they're first starting to understand what it means to be connected by the internet. And then this last one I'm going to talk about is called Backups, A Summer of Stardom, and it follows three friends, Jenny, Lauren, and Maggie, who have been asked to become backup singers to pop star Nika Nitro, and they're having a ball, but it's not that easy to be on tour. Nika has some, diva moments where she's somewhat difficult to work with, and then they end up getting in this beef with a rival band that could reveal a secret that Nika has been hiding, and the backups aren't sure their friendship will be able to withstand the fallout. Okay, so those are some of the graphic novels. Let's look at some of the nonfiction. This first one is called Conservation Canines, and it looks at how dogs are doing their part to save the world and save our environment, whether it's protecting animals that are in danger of becoming extinct, or finding animals that have been hurt, or other things like that. If you are a dog lover, if you are worried about the environment, then you will enjoy Conservation Canines. This next one is called Blackbirds in the Sky, and it tells the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre of June 1921, in which a very angry white mob crossed the tracks in Tulsa, Oklahoma to what was considered Black Wall Street, and really razed almost 35 square blocks to the ground with hundreds dead. So this story talks about the build up to that, like why did this happen? Why did this mob get so angry? Why did they decide to do this to the Black community? And it has a lot of first person accounts of people who were actually there, and talks about maybe some hope for the future of how we can prevent these kind of racial violent acts from happening again in the US. So that's called Blackbirds in the Sky. This next one is a biography of Megan Rapaport. It's called One Life. And this is the story of Megan, who is a famous soccer player. She's an incredible athlete, but she's also really big into working towards social justice. She's a member of the LGBTQ+ community, and she's one of the first high-profile athletes to take a knee in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick. So this talks about her beginnings, how she got involved in professional sports, and what that has meant for her and her fight for equality for all people, whether it's the LGBTQ+ community or the Black Lives Matter movement, or just everyone in general. A very inspiring story of a woman working for change. This next one is called The Story of More. It's actually a adapted for young adults. It's a young person version of an adult story, but it's talking about climate change and human beings, especially Americans, need to consume things and have things and filling up our landfills and things like that. So it has a different chapter about food, energy, earth, and then also it talks a lot about how as a human race we can learn to live with less in order to save our planet. So if you're curious about climate change, if you're looking for things that you personally can do to make things better, this would be a good choice for you. This next one is kind of a fun one. It's called How Dreams Speak, and it looks at what you are dreaming about and what it could mean. Like, if, for example, if you have an avocado in your dream, what does that mean? If you have babies, bats, books, candles, climbing. So in the morning when you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, what on earth, what did that mean? Why did I dream about that? You could look up the specific item that was in your dream, and it might give you some ideas of what you might be thinking about and why that would show up in your dreams. This next one is called Passport to the Paranormal, your guide to haunted spots in America. There's over 200 different locations across America that have, well, there's more than that, but this book covers 200 different spots that have had some sort of paranormal activity. There's an entire chapter for each state in the United States, including 2 spots in Milwaukee from Wisconsin. So if you're interested in perhaps taking a vacation to somewhere spooky, this would be a good place to start. This next one is actually the second one by Rex Ogle. It's called Punching Bag. His first one was called Free Lunch, where he talked about his life growing up in poverty. In this book, he actually talks about his life growing up with domestic abuse. On the back, I'm just going to read a little bit of it because it kind of gives you an idea of what he's talking about. He says, I feel like I'm always waiting for something, for my dad to send the child support check so we can pay our phone bill, for bad news like someone's sick or dying or already dead, for jerks at school to make fun of my shoes with their holes in them or my clothes from the secondhand store, for store clerks to give me those looks like they don't trust me because of my neighborhood, or for our place to get robbed again, or for my stepdad to come home in a mood because he's already been drinking and he's ready to rumble, for mom to get in her dark mood, the one where she looks at me like I'm out to get her because the whole world is always out to get her and she can't trust anyone, not even me. I hate waiting, but I'm always waiting because something bad is just around the corner. Usually it's a fist. And so it's a story about Rex living in this kind of environment, really worrying about his younger sister and hoping to keep her safe, while he really often feels like a punching bag for his stepfather. So that's called Rex Ogle. It is a true story. This next one is called The Curse of the Mummy, and it chronicles the desire to find King Tut's tomb. When King Tut came into power, he died at a very young age, and they created this tomb with all of his treasures, a lot of rituals that the Egyptians did at that time, and it kind of got lost for many, many years, buried in the desert. And then two people, a kind of a down on his luck British explorer and an archaeologist, decide that they're going to hunt for it. However, the tomb was rumored to be cursed. There was some mysterious illnesses, accidents, and deaths for those associated with the tomb and those who went into it, who touched things in it. And this book looks at all of the mysteries surrounding that and what ended up happening to the treasures of King Tut. And then the last one I'm going to talk about today, this one is called Fallout. This is by the same author who wrote the book Bomb, which was about the first atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And this one looks at the fallout of that event. So like what happened after America demonstrated that they could use a nuclear weapon and dropped it on Hiroshima? And what did that do to the rest of our time? We're still dealing with a lot of those aftershocks now when we talk about atomic weapons. And this one specifically looks at the conflict between America and Russia that led up to the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was our closest brush to what would have been the Third World War and probably the final war. So it's called Fallout. If you like military history, you definitely would enjoy this. Enjoy.